Tim, welcome to the Watch Us Thrive podcast. I am so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to reach one more person.
Yes, absolutely. And, before we started recording, I said that I don't really have a lot of men on my podcast. You might be the fourth or fifth one. So, shout out to you for coming on to share your truth and your wisdom and really gear the conversation towards an audience that's definitely lacking when it comes to mental health and recovery and all those things. Definitely going to jump into that a little bit later on. But for anyone who's meeting you for the first time, I would love for you to introduce yourself in your own words. Let my audience know, who is Tim Lodgen.
Well, I'm a 46-year-old from Baltimore, Maryland, born and raised. And I survived 27 years of alcohol and drug addiction. I survived 2 suicide attempts. And I'm here to share my story that other people that are going through the same thing, mental illness, addiction, suicide thoughts, or maybe even attempts, to let them know that everything changes. I was at that hopeless point in my life where I believed truly that my mental illness and addiction was my death sentence and there was absolutely no way out. If I were to have killed that person or been successful in that suicide attempt, I would have been killing the wrong person, because the person I am today is not the person that I was trying to destroy. And through recovery, through finding faith in a higher power and believing that there is something greater than me that could restore me to sanity and change my life, I'm here to be able to share my story and let those who are hopeless and still suffering know that just like the waves on a beach, they come and go, and every day is a new day, and things can and will change, and they always do.
Oh my God, I have like goosebumps already, you guys. And we are only 2 minutes into this conversation. I just know that your story and your testimony is going to help so many people in whatever stage of the recovery process they're in. So I can't wait to get started. But, every single guest that comes on my show, I always have them start off with talking about what their childhood and their adolescent life was like. So I would love for you to share as much or as little as you're comfortable with talking about. Did you struggle with addiction and mental illness around that time? And were there some like pivotal pieces during that time frame that stick out for you you're willing to share?
Basically, my mom and my dad were not drug addicts or alcoholics. It wasn't in my family. There was no alcohol in my home. There was no drugs in my home. My mom's 73. I think I've literally seen her drink 6 beers in my entire lifetime. My father was a police officer. He retired after 37 years. My mother, believe it or not, in the 80s was one of the first women bodybuilders ever. And so she was all into fitness and health and eating right. And then she became a vice president of this big company here in Baltimore. But there was no alcohol or drugs anywhere. My mother and father did get a divorce when I was 6 years old, so I was in first grade. So I primarily grew up with my mother. And I bring that up because as a 6-year-old boy growing up without a father, I truly believed it was my fault. I have a brother who's 10 years older than me. So for me at that age, I was like, well, why did you stick around for him so long, but you left me at 6 years old? What did I do to make you leave? Was I not a good boy? Did I not clean my room? Did I not do good at school? What was it about me that you decided to leave me as a young child? And I held on to that for 30 plus years. And I allowed that thought to sometimes fuel my drug and alcohol addiction, because I figured if my own parent didn't love me, why should I love myself?
Why do you think you had that mentality at such a young age?
I like to say I'm a very smart person. I have street smarts.
Hmm.
I've always been aware of my surroundings, and I've always been able to pick up on adult conversations even when I was little, and I was able to process them and understand what they were talking about. So I was just always very aware. I didn't really think anything of it, or realize maybe it was a benefit. But as I got older and kind of got into drugs and alcohol in my teenage years around 11th, 12th grade, I always had this feeling that I shouldn't be doing this. I'm better than this. I'm worth more than this. I have a purpose. But I would always just flush it away with drugs and alcohol. But every single time, I still had a conscious thought of, I shouldn't be doing this. This isn't me. And I would fight myself back and forth with that. I don't know if a lot of people feel this way, but ever since I was a small child, I always thought I had something special to give to this world. I always thought I had some type of gift to give, and I never knew what it was. And honestly believe that's why I was so lost for so long, because I was always searching for why I was here. I always knew I had a purpose, but what was it? So I searched and searched and searched. And through drugs and alcohol, it gave me a feeling of godlike substance, I guess, sometimes. And it nullified the feeling of my importance. So I wouldn't have to search anymore because I would dull my feelings and dull my thoughts.
Yeah. And it's interesting that as you're talking about it, you have such a keen sense of self awareness even though you're battling with something so heavy like drugs and alcohol and mental illness, but you still had that ray of hope, which is definitely what this conversation is going to be based around of. And I'm curious to know for you, when did your journey of dealing with the drugs and the alcohol, when did that really start to spiral out of control? Because you said it started in your teenage years. Was there like a particular moment for you that caused you to just like go down that rabbit hole, or was it like a gradual?
It's funny because, my whole life I was into sports. Everything that I've always done, I've been extremely good at. It didn't matter what it is. Like if I played baseball, I wasn't just the pitcher, I was the all star pitcher. When I played football, I was the all star running back. When I boxed, I didn't just box, I became Golden Glove and Junior Olympic boxer. I boxed in the Junior Olympics. When I skateboarded, I was almost a professional skateboarder, skateboarding with professional skateboarders. Like I took everything to the extreme. My 11th grade year of high school, I realized that I didn't have the grades to get into college. And a lot of my friends were going towards college or getting deep into some heavy drugs. And I didn't want to do that. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to sign up for the Marine Corps. So when I graduate, when I get done high school, I'm going to go right into the Marine Corps, right into the military, and that will give me some direction for at least another 4 years. So my senior year comes, and I had a bright idea of, well, I'm going away next year. So let me go to some parties and start having some fun. Let me get it out of my system. That's exactly what I thought and told myself, because next year shit's going to hit the fan. I'm going in the military. It's going to get serious. So let me go party and have some fun. And I started going to parties and drinking. And for me, when I started drinking, my wall came down and I was like, well, what else is at this party? I might as well try a little bit of everything right now. So that's where the pot came in, and the LSD and the mushrooms and the painkillers and PCP and opium and like whatever was around. Thank God there was no heroin around at that time, because I would have done it and I would have tried it. And who knows, I might not even be here talking to you now. But whatever else was around, I tried ecstasy, like whatever else was around. I get into the Marine Corps and the drugs stopped 100%. I go through boot camp. There's no alcohol in boot camp. You get out, and I get stationed in North Carolina. And the moment that we got off at 4 o'clock, we were off the base and out to the strip clubs, out to the bars. And they would serve us at 18, 19, 20 years old, because their motto was, if you're old enough to die for this country, you're old enough to have a cold beer. So the bars and the strip clubs, they would serve us. And as 18, 19, 20-year-old men, we're influenced by our sergeants who are late 20s, early 30s. They're at the same bar doing the same thing, and they're not trying to deter us in any way. Oh, you guys shouldn't be here drinking. They would just simply say, don't get arrested, don't get into a fight, and make sure your ass is up at 3:30 in the morning and at formation at 4 o'clock. Other than that, fellas, have a good time, but make sure you're ready to perform tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a deterrent whatsoever. So my alcoholism really took off in my time in the Marine Corps, because that's what we did. We trained hard and we partied hard, and it was almost like a badge of honor. How much could you drink and get messed up and be up at 3:30 at 4 o'clock, be running 3 miles, throwing up during the run, but still completing it and thinking, oh man, I'm a man, this is what I just did. So that's when the alcoholism extremely, extremely took off.
And you said you were on this journey for 27 years. So was there any moments in time where you like went to rehab or you were sober and ended up falling off the wagon? What was that like?
So when I got home from the Marine Corps, first month was kind of cool. I was like, man, I'm out. I don't have to get up at 3:30. I don't have to shave. I don't have to haircut, and the first month was really good. It was like a decompression period. The second month, I kind of got into, oh shit, I'm living back at my mom's house. I'm 21. I don't have a car. I don't have a job. I'm living back in my old bedroom. Like I started to feel like a loser. Like, man, I got to start taking care of responsibilities. And I was drinking. And I started smoking pot again as soon as I got out because I didn't have drug tests. So I was like, yeah, I'm definitely smoking some pot. And I would get some pain pills here and there from my buddies. Not like I was in high school, but I did. And then the third month came and I fell into a deep, deep depression. I felt as if I had lost my identity. I was no longer in the military. I wasn't a Marine anymore. I didn't have my brothers around me. I didn't have that sense of accomplishment anymore because I've been home now for almost 90 days and I don't have a job and I don't have a car and I'm a loser and I'm back living at home at my mom's house. And what am I going to do with the rest of my life? So I fell into this really deep depression to the point where I went into my stepfather's armoire and grabbed his gun and sat it on my lap. And I'm sitting there looking at it and I don't know what I'm doing. But I had the right mind at that time to call my girlfriend. And I said, hey, I'm sitting here looking at a gun. I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. And she came over to my house within 5 minutes, took it from me. And when my mom came home that evening, I said, Mom, something's wrong. I didn't tell her I just had my stepdad's gun in my lap. She would have kind of freaked out and had me committed and all that stuff. But I said, something's wrong. I need to talk to somebody because, and so that next week, she got me into starting to talk to doctors, psychiatrists, therapists. And this is 95, 96. So at that time, they diagnosed me with bipolar 1 manic depressive disorder. And PTSD wasn't a thing in 95, 96. It just, I'm sure the government knew in some form and capacity that the trauma that guys go through in the military, but there wasn't a specific name for it at that time and or diagnosis or treatment. Their first thing was to put me on medicines, which is the first thing that they do. You have a chemical imbalance. We need to get your A and B receptors to start meeting because they're misfiring. And that's why you have your ups and your downs and your highs and your lows. And I want to tell people, if you're suffering from any type of mental illness or health illness, as far as like your heart or your liver, your kidneys, or high blood pressure, or whatever you are going through, please be honest with your doctors because the medicines that they were putting me on, they weren't working because I was drinking and smoking pot and taking painkillers when I could. So when I would go back every 30, 60 or 90 days, well, how you doing? It's in your system long enough. It should be working. And I'm like, it's not working. I feel worse. What do you mean? It's not working. I don't know what to tell you. Okay, maybe those medicines aren't for you. We're going to put you on these medicines. And you come back in 30 or 60 days once that's in your system. And that cycle of on and off medicines, trying to find the right cocktails, if you would, went on my entire life from 21 all the way up to the age of 44 until I finally went into rehab.
That sounds exhausting.
It was. And that's what I would go through periods where I was like, screw this. This medicine isn't working. I'm not taking this shit anymore. It's a waste of time. And my addiction and my alcoholism would spike during those months because I was self-medicating. And then
Yeah.
I would have a big crash. And my wife would be like, you need to go back on that medicine. And I would take it for months. I think the longest time out of that whole span I took medicine for was for 1 year straight. And then as a bipolar alcoholic addict, I would say, well, I'm doing great. I don't need this shit
I don't
anymore.
need it. Yep.
Why am I taking it?
Right.
And 30, 60 days later, I'd crash again and back on the cycle. But I did do, in my 20s, I did 30 days. We have a place here called Shepherd Pratt Institute. And it's one of the, I guess, East Coast biggest mental illness facilities. And I spent 30 days outpatient going there for marijuana abuse and addiction and mental illness. And I spent 72-hour holds at Franklin Square Hospital for telling people I was feeling as if I was going to hurt myself. So I did 2 stints in the hospital for 72 hours. I think one was a week, but one was just 72-hour hold just to make sure I wasn't going to hurt myself. And then they would put me back on the medicine and send me home with my prescription.
Wow. As you're telling the story, I can just like envision it in my mind of what it is you experience. And it sounds like a Lifetime movie. It sounds like something that you see on movie screens or TV shows. And for you to have that lived experience, it's so fascinating to see the man that you are today. And just listening to, I'm sure this is just like a little piece of the shit that you've gone through, right?
You have
Like,
no
this is
idea.
nothing. Yeah, right. We would be here all day if you would share all the stories, but this is why I wanted to have you come on because you've gone through probably hell and back as many times as you can think of. And I'm sure there was like a huge pivotal moment for you when you realized like this has got to be the last fucking time because I'm tired. So I would love to hear from you like what was the aha moment for you when you were like I can't fucking do this anymore after battling with this addiction for decades.
Well, I tell you, there was two aha moments, and the first one I dismissed and I didn't listen to. And I'm going to share that because
Please.
if I would have listened to it, I might have 6 or 8 years sober, but I didn't, and I let it go. But it got to the point where I was taking 8 to 10, 20 milligram oxycontins a day. I had surgeries and I was getting them from the doctor. And this is 10, 11 years ago when they said oxycontins are not addictive and you can take them and stop at any moment and have no adverse side effects, which is how they sold it. And that's how the insurance people sold it to the doctors. You can take this and then your patient can just stop it. So I was getting them from my doctor at that point. I didn't have to go through the pain management clinic. I didn't have to go all through all the hoops that they do now, which is awesome. I think it's great that they made the change, but I didn't have to do that. I would simply go to my doctor and say, I need more. And he would just write my prescription right there. And I'd go right to the pharmacy and get them. So I was at that point, I was taking 8 to 10, 20 milligram Oxycontins. I was drinking a 12 pack to 18 pack of beer a day, and I was smoking a quarter of weed every single day.
That sounds so expensive. I just want to say.
Well, the pills were insurance. They were $8 a month. So that wasn't, but the beer, yes. But I was a carpenter, so I've made good money my entire life. And the weed, I would sell some on the side too. So my profit would just be the free bag coming back to me. So I would sometimes have to put out some money, but if I was selling a quarter ounce, I would basically get an ounce for free afterwards. So that was my payoff. I didn't have to put the money out.
And as an addict, like you're gonna make it happen by any means necessary.
Absolutely. And I would call my mom every once in a while. Hey, mom, I need some money for gas. I need $100 to fill my gas tank up. I would go use that and go buy weed or go buy my alcohol for the couple days. And I was a master manipulator and I played the sympathy card a lot.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, I used my mother at the time was a very wealthy lady and she had no problem just handing money over to me, which I don't want to say she enabled me, but she just sure as hell didn't never put her foot down, if that makes sense. But
Absolutely.
yeah, but it got to the point where I was taking the 8 to 10, 20 milligrams. I was drinking the 12 to 18 beers and smoking weed. And I remember going into my bedroom and saying, I just can't do this anymore. I don't want to live this way anymore. And it was scaring me. I was like, I'm taking so much of this pain pills and drinking so much of this alcohol that one night I'm going to go to bed and my body's going to say, fuck you. And it's going to end and I'm not going to wake up tomorrow. And my thought was like, screw that. If that's the way it's going to happen, I'm going to do it. And I
Mm.
reach over and I grab my bottle and I pour it out into my hand. And I had 18 20 milligram oxys. And I take all 18 of them and I go out into the living room and I guzzle a 12 pack of beer in like 45 minutes. I go into my bedroom and I lay on the bed and I say, please, God, don't let me wake up because I don't want to live this way and I don't know how to stop. And I pass out. I wake up the next day, like 16, 18 hours later. It was in the evening time. And my first thought was, holy shit, I didn't die.
Mm.
My second thought was to immediately get up and go into the bathroom and grab my refill and pour it into the toilet. I then remember looking into the mirror and saying, I don't care how bad this gets. We are never going through this again. We are never taking pain pills ever again. And for the next 10 days of my life, I was the sickest I think I've ever been. And literally in my 46 years of being on this earth. And it lasted for 10 days. At the end of the 10 days, I wanted to get out of the house. I was like, I got to go for a ride. I got to clear my head. I got to go out of the house. And we have this beautiful reservoir down here where people go biking and hiking and fishing and picnicking and they run through it. It's a very beautiful reservoir. And I'm driving through the reservoir and I'm crying. And I'm looking up at the sky and I'm like, why am I here? Why did I live? What's my purpose? What are you doing to me? If you love me so much, why are you letting me suffer so badly? What did I do to deserve all of this pain and suffering? And that's what I'm screaming in my truck. And I'm hitting the steering wheel and I'm just like yelling up because I had lost faith that there was something so powerful that loved me so much that would allow me to suffer so badly. That's the state I was in. And I'm driving through the park and I get to this tree where in 1996, my best friend unfortunately lost control of his vehicle. He hit the tree and he lost his life at the age of 18. And I drive up and I get to the tree and I park and I get out to the tree and I'm crying and I got my hand on the tree and I'm like, Bill, I need a sign, man. I need to know that there's something else out there besides me because I don't know why I lived. I don't know why I'm here. And I don't believe that there's something else out there because I don't know why I'm suffering so bad. If there is something else out there, Please send me a sign so that I know that I'm not alone, that there's something watching out over me, that I'm going to be okay. And I get in my truck and I go to leave the park. And as I'm leaving, I'm like crying and like my nose is running and stuff. So I pull over on the side of the road. But for some reason, I didn't pull over on the right hand side of the road, which I'm on. For some reason, I pull over on the left hand side of the road facing oncoming traffic and I park. And I'm wiping my tears and blowing my nose. And 10 minutes goes by and this car pulls up in front of me. We're windshield to windshield because I'm on the opposite side of the road. And I watch this man get out of his vehicle and he opens his back door and he grabs his dog and he's about to go walk across the street where the water is to go throw a stick, play with his dog for a little bit. And I'm watching him. I'm like, man, this guy looks so familiar. Like, he looks really, really familiar. And then all of a sudden it dawned on me. It was my best friend who died in 1996. It was his father. This
Are
is
you
Mark.
fucking kidding me?
This is March 16th, 2017, 21 years later. I
Wow.
haven't seen this man since the day of my best friend's funeral. I haven't run into him. We live in the same county. No contact with this man for 21 years. And I get out of my truck and I look at him. I say, Mr. Bill, is that you? And he turns around and he says, Timmy, is that you? And I said, yes. He says, what are you doing here? I said, I'm lost. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a drug addict. I don't know why I'm here. And he walks over to me and he puts his hand on my shoulder and he says, Timmy, I'm not supposed to be here this morning. My wife came to me in a dream last night and told me to come here at 10 a.m. to walk the dog. I was supposed to leave at 6 a.m. this morning to go to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina for a family reunion trip. But I'm here because she told me to come walk the dog. I believe I was sent here to see you.
Mm,
And I looked at him and I said, Mr. Bill, I just stopped at Billy's tree and asked him for a sign that I wasn't alone, that something was watching out over me. And he looks at me and goes, Timmy, they're watching out over us. They're there. Everything is going to be okay.
mm.
And we hug and we talk for about 10 minutes. And I get in my truck and I leave. As I'm driving out of the park, I have about 10, 15 minutes of pure, like, okay, everything's going to be all right. I'm going to be okay. I'm being protected. And then my addictive disease steps in and says, you're absolutely right. You are being protected. Nothing is going to happen to you. You're going to be okay. So you don't have to stop drinking because you are being protected. And for the next 4 years, from 2017 to March 5th, 2021, I drank the most alcohol I've ever drank in my entire life. If the beers weren't doing it, the 12 to 18 beer Miller Lights or Killians or whatever I was drinking, the Sam Adams, they weren't doing it. So I switched to the IPAs and the lagers, the 12, the 11, 13% beers. And I was still drinking 12 of those. And I'm like, I'm missing something, because I'm used to being on pills. I'm missing something. Let me grab a couple of these Fireball miniatures off the counter. So I grab a couple of them, and I remember taking that first shot of the Fireball miniature and it hitting my body and it feeling exactly like when I would take a pain pill. That warm blanket feeling that goes all the way down to your toes. And it was almost instant. It was like, ah. And I was like, oh shit, this is what I've been missing. Okay. So it just started off with me getting 4 or 5 of them out the counter with my 12 pack. Then I was like, you know what? I'm spending a lot of money on this beer because they were expensive. They were like 18, $20 a 6-pack for this high end lager stuff. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to buy a sleeve of Fireball, which is 10 of them. It was only $11. You're talking $1.10 a piece. I'm like, hell yeah. So I would start buying 10 of those. I would finish them off halfway through the day and get another 10 by the end of the day and finish them. And then I said, you know what? Screw the beer. I'm just no longer going to drink beer. And it got to the point at 6:30 in the morning, I would get up and go to the liquor store that opened at 7 and grab 10. I'd finish all 10 of them. And at my lunchtime at 1:30, I'd go to the nearest liquor store from the job site I was working at and grab another 10. I'd finish all of them by 3:30 or 4 when I got off. I would stop back at that liquor store to get another 10 to drive home. I would finish 5 of them on the ride home. I would stop and get a 6-pack of beer because I had to make sure I had some just in case. And by 8:30, I would finish the other 5 and maybe 3 or 4 beers sometimes. So that last year and a half of my addiction that really spiked out of control, I was drinking 30 Fireball miniatures a day. Again, people ask me, why did you get the miniatures? Why didn't you get a big bottle? Because my mind told me don't get the big bottle. I would then know how much exact alcohol I was drinking. And that would be confirmation. I'm an alcoholic. But these little miniatures, I could drink them, throw them out the window while I'm driving. I could hide them and forget about them. I wouldn't exactly know how much I was drinking. It was kind of, I was playing a game with myself, not taking the accountability of how much I was drinking. One of those miniatures is 2.5 shots. So 2.5 times 30, I was drinking upwards of 60 to 80 shots of Fireball whiskey every single day for over a year. It got to the point, what got me into rehab and my other moment that changed my life was I was coming back from the liquor store and I hit something in my truck that was 2 months old, brand new truck. And I walk in the front door and I was like, I hit something. I'm going to bed. I'm not dealing with this shit tonight. And I go to bed. I wake up the next morning like a typical blackout drunk. And I'm like, hey, good morning, everybody. I'm going to go to the store and get milk and bread. What do you guys want for breakfast? Like, no clue what I did the night before. And my wife said, how are you going to do that, Tim? I said, in my truck. She says, go outside and look at your truck in the driveway. And I go outside and the right mirror on the passenger side's gone. And my right front tire is hanging off the rim and it's up underneath of the bumper. And I'm just sitting there looking at it in the driveway. And she pops her head out the front door and she says, you don't know what you hit last night, do you? I said, no, I don't. She said, Tim, you could have killed yourself. You could have killed somebody else. This has to stop. You can't stay here anymore with the kids. You're going to have to leave and go figure this out, but I don't want you here anymore. You have to go and go figure this out. I call the AAA company. They come. They put my spare tire on. I pack my bags and I call my buddy. I'm like, hey, man, wife's kicking me out for a couple of days. She'll cool out in a couple of days. I'm going to let some things blow over, but is it cool if I spend the night with you for a couple of days? Sure, man, no problem. Come on over. Get to his house. We talk for like 45 minutes or an hour. Tell him what all is going on. And he said, well, you know, man, it's Friday night. Your wife just kicked you out of the house. We might as well go to the bar and have some drinks, man. And I'm like, you know what? Absolutely. Because my wife just kicked me out. I have a reason to go to the bar now, a justifiable reason in my head. So we go to the bar. We drink. I get completely shit-faced. And as I'm leaving the bar, I rear end somebody at a red light. And this is less than 15 hours from the night before of me doing it. I get out, and luckily the guy had a tow hitch on the back of his truck. His truck was spotless, not a scratch. But the front of my bumper now is all V'd in where the tow hitch was. And I get out, I'm like, are you okay, man? He goes, yeah, I'm fine. He goes, my truck's okay. I'm like, damn, it is. I said, okay, well, you're okay. Your truck's okay. I'm out of here, buddy. And I slapped him on his back, and I got in my truck, and I took off. Because I knew if the cops were coming, I was going to jail for DUI. My truck was getting impounded. My life was going to totally change forever. So I get back to my buddy's house, and I'm like, hey, man, I got to go be by myself. I don't want to be here. I'm just going to leave and go be by myself. So I leave his house. I stop at the liquor store. I get my 10 miniatures, and I go and I park my truck at a park and ride where people park their cars for the day and catch a train or a bus and go to work. I pull in, and I turn my phone off. I didn't want to talk to nobody. I didn't want to hear from nobody. I just wanted to be left alone. And for 48 hours, I sat in my trunk and I drank and threw up and passed out and drank and threw up and passed out. Didn't eat a damn thing, just kept drinking and throwing up and passing out. And finally, after 48 hours, on March 5th, 2021, I turned my phone on at 7 after 10 in the morning. 2 minutes later, the phone rings. And I look down and I don't recognize the number. It says Westchester, Pennsylvania. And I'm like, who the hell is this? I don't know anybody from Pennsylvania. But I pick it up. It's my childhood friend, Brandon Novak. He says, Lodgen, what the fuck are you doing? I said, I'm cold, I'm drunk, I'm hungry, and I'm tired. And he says, good, motherfucker. That's what you need. He said, I just got off the phone with your wife and your mom. I got a plane ticket set for you this evening at 8:30. I got you into Banyan Treatment Centers down in West Palm Beach, Florida. I want you to get on that plane and go get your life back. And I'm kind of just like, yeah, okay, man, okay, yeah. I'm pretty much agreeing with him just so I can hang up the phone. Okay, man. I hang up. 5 minutes later, my wife calls me. Where are you? People have been trying to call you for 2 days. We're worried sick. Are you okay? I just got off the phone with Brandon. Can you please come home, take a shower, pack your bags, try to eat something, and try to take a nap? Because I had like 4 to 5 hours before I had to be at the plane. I said, okay. I go home, take a shower, and I pack my bags. I couldn't sleep and I couldn't eat. My nerves are out of control. My mind's racing. I'm having a tiny panic attack, an anxiety attack, and I'm sitting in my bedroom. I'm like, holy shit, my life has gotten to this point where I got to go to rehab in Florida. He didn't tell me how long I'm going for. Is it a 30, 60, 90-day program? Am I going to be going for 6 months? Like, holy shit, I can't believe I allowed my life to get to this point where my only option now is to go to rehab. And I'm talking myself out of it as I'm sitting on the bed. I was like, I can't go. I can't do it. I can't go. There's no way. My job. I'm coming up with every excuse in the book on why I can't go to rehab. And I'm like, I just can't do it. And one last time, my mental illness and addiction steps in and says, you know what? You're right. You can't do it. Come with me. And it grabs my hand and it walks me to the basement of my home. And I throw a rope around my neck and I stand up on a bucket. And my mental illness and the demon of addiction tells me to jump off and end the pain. And I listen and I go into my home where my children and my wife are, and I throw the rope around my neck and I stand up on this bucket in the dark in the basement. And about 30 seconds, maybe a minute goes by, and my wife realizes I'm not in the bedroom anymore. And she comes looking for me, and she comes down to the basement of our home. And I'm in the corner of the basement with this rope around my neck, standing on a bucket, hysterically crying. And she says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I can't do it. I can't go. I just want the pain to stop, and I don't know how." And she looks at me and she says, "Tim, do you know what this will do to your little girls? Please get off of that bucket and get on that plane. Get on that plane and everything is going to be all right." I listen, I take it off my neck and I fall to the floor and I cry for about 5 to 10 minutes. And I go upstairs and I pick up my phone. I'm like, "Hey, Brandon, I'm going, man. I got to get on this plane. If I don't get on this plane, my addiction is going to kill me." And all he says is, "I'm proud of you. I love you. Call me when you pass security. I want to make sure you're getting on the plane and not catching a cab after you get dropped off and leave." I said, "Okay, man, okay." A couple hours go by. My mom picks me up, takes me to the airport. I get past security and I call him and say, "Hey, buddy, I got 35 minutes before the plane boards. I'm past security. I'm getting on the plane. I'm going." And all he says is, "I'm proud of you. I love you. You're about to get back everything that you've ever lost times 10." And he simply just hangs up the phone. As I go to sit down at the seat, waiting for them to call my boarding pass to board the plane, as I sit down at the seat at the airport, I get this overwhelming feeling of hope that engulfs my entire body. It was the same feeling drugs and alcohol had given me, except this time, my worry, my doubt, my fear, my anxiety, my pain, my depression all leave my body at once. And I hear this voice that I've never heard before or since. It was a woman's voice, and it was very calming and loving. And she simply says, "Everything is going to be all right." It was the most amazing experience that I have ever had in my entire life. And immediately my mind changed right then and there at the airport. And I knew at the age of 44 years, after 27 years of suffering mental illness and addiction, that I was going to be on the path to change my life forever. I got to rehab and I didn't miss a meeting. I went to extra meetings for military members and veterans. I spoke, I shared, I volunteered, I changed my diet, started eating completely healthy, started working back out with a personal trainer. I changed my life mentally, spiritually, and physically because I knew and I finally understood that this was a life and death situation. And that if I didn't do it, I ultimately was going to die. When I got to rehab, the doctor pulled me in after taking all my tests and blood work and stuff. And he said, "How old are you?" I said, "I'm 44. He said, "Your liver and kidneys are failing. Your blood pressure is 167 over 145. You're on the verge of having a stroke." He's like, "If you would have waited another month to come into this facility, even if you would have stopped drinking," he said, "you would not make it to the age of 47. He said, "I don't know how or why you've come in here at this time." He said, "But you came in at the exact time to save your life and to change your health." I cannot line up all of those things that have happened in a row as a coincidence. It was meant to be at that exact time in my life to change my life forever. And I understood it. I understood that I was just given a gift. And my friend gave me the gift of hope for free. And I know that that's what I must do now is give one more person the gift of hope for free because it was so lovingly and sparingly given to me that I now know my purpose of those 27 years didn't happen to me. It happened for me. It happened for me to become this person I am now. It happened for me to understand this true gift of life and how precious this is. And I just want one more person to understand that they have a purpose in this world. They're loved. Their life is a gift. There's no reason to be ashamed of what you went through or disgusted or embarrassed. It's okay to not be okay. We all need to know that we are here for each other. Our world would be so much better if just one more person would help one more person. That's what we're supposed to be doing, isn't it? We're supposed to be here for each other and make this world a better place. And if more people understood this, this place would be almost a dream to live in because everybody would be so peaceful and loving and caring. And so that's what my purpose is now. And I know it.
Mm.
I know I had to go through that.
Whew, man, that was one of the most powerful testimony that I've ever heard, and I just wanna say thank you so much for painting that picture and taking us on that journey because just the resiliency that you have and the growth mindset that you have been able to grow from in the turmoil that you've gone through. And it's with us having these conversations, right? That's how we can start to create change and start to normalize asking for help, especially in for men, right? This is not something that's normal for the community, especially also communities of color. You know, I'm Puerto Rican and mental health, all of that was definitely not a conversation growing up. And I just think there's such a power and a gift in us being able to share our own life experiences of what we've gone through. And, you know, like for me, my whole testimony was when I left an abusive relationship. And honestly, today is the 2-year anniversary of when I escaped that relationship. And being in that turmoil, in that rock bottom moment, when I thought my life was going to be taken away from me, that is where my purpose was born. Now, I didn't feel that way in that moment. I felt fucking lost and I was like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna die," right? But when I escaped and when I started the whole journey to healing, that's when this new Leanne was born, and I've been on my rebirth journey, and me sharing my story has helped so many people, and I think it's so beautiful that you're able to share your story in a way that's going to change and is changing so many lives. So I just wanna say thank you so much for that because that was powerful.
Thank you for having me a platform for me to be able to reach one more person and allow my story to get out there.
Absolutely, for sure. I wanna get some more advice out of you before we start to wind down the conversation, but, you know, when it comes to recovery and the healing process, it's difficult, it's hard as fuck, right? And especially if you're battling with addiction and mental illness and all of those things, and when you're struggling through, that's where hope hopefully comes in, right? And I looked up the definition on the dictionary. I want to share with the audience and then I want to get your point of view. So, hope is a feeling of expectation and desire for a certain thing to happen, a feeling of trust. So, I want to know in your words, what does hope mean to you? And do you feel like that is the starting point for being able to recover from addiction?
I do. Hope for me is almost the same definition as faith, believing in something greater than yourself that you cannot see, but believing that it is there. Without that, I believe you're going to be lost in this world without believing in something that powerful as hope and or faith. I lost hope so many times, and when I did lose it, I didn't want to live anymore. That's a scary, scary place to be. I was given hope over and over and over again, but I didn't acknowledge it. I didn't take it for as that. I just thought it was another. You know how sometimes when people get motivated and they're like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do the." Perfect example. Resolution for the year. I'm gonna start working out, and they're motivated for a month or so, and then they die off and it goes away. I would get those bursts of okay, everything's gonna be okay, but then when you actually have to continue to put in the work and develop discipline and do it day in and day out and day in and day out and consistency, I would fall off. And now I understand that motivation is bullshit. I just want to tell people that. It's a great starting point.
Right,
It gets you going, but you have to develop perseverance and consistency and discipline because without that, that motivation comes and goes. It's like motivation is almost like you hit a crack. It gets your endorphins running, it gets that surge of energy through your body, and it lasts for a minimum long time and then it goes away. And then you search for it again. It's almost like doing drugs. People listen to motivational videos and they're half an hour to an hour long and you feel good for a couple hours. And I mean, I need to listen to another one, and they go back and listen to it. I want to say hope is the all end all be all for somebody in recovery, but it's not. Unfortunately, when you're addicted to drugs and alcohol, it doesn't matter how many people help you. It doesn't matter if they pack your bags, make your plane ticket for you, and walk you to that front door. If you yourself have not made up that decision that enough is enough, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, it's not going to work. And that's the unfortunate truth about addiction.
Yes, I relate to that so much, not in the sense because I never struggled with addiction to drugs. I struggled with an addiction to toxicity in relationships and lack of self-love. And it took for me 2 years ago to almost lose my life to really finally look in the mirror and realize I'm sick and tired of my own shit. And there's some shit about Leanne that she needed to work on because you were attracting this same type of toxicity in a different partner. So I love that you bring that up. Like taking accountability can literally change your life. But it's fucking hard. It's hard, it's uncomfortable, and a lot of people don't like to do that.
No, and I've always read and listened and heard people say that when that switch in your brain goes off, all things will change. And I remember thinking, where the hell's my switch?
Right.
Why isn't it going off? I want it to go off. It happens at the exact moment in your life when it is needed to happen for you, but it does happen.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, I love this conversation so much. I could just listen to you all day. Now I see why he's a motivational speaker. So, what advice would you share with someone who's struggling with their own traumas, and how can they shift their mindset from surviving to thriving?
Know that you're not alone. Know that what you're going through, other people have gone through it. Your story is not the worst story you're ever going to hear. The more people that you talk to, the more people that you reach out, the more people that you share your story with, you will come to soonly realize that there are so many more people out there that had a worse life than you. And that's a commonality between people in recovery, addiction, trauma. Don't be afraid to call somebody and say, hey, I need help. This is what I'm going through. I don't know what to do.
Mm,
Can you help me? It might be just as simple as somebody listening to what you're going through. It might be somebody simply as saying, hey, I believe in you. I'm proud of you. You can do this, and I got your back. It's very hard to hold on to all those things. Look, listen, everybody is going through something somewhere along the line. We all think the same things. Nobody's going to understand what I'm going through. They're going to judge me. They're going to shun me. They're going to think I'm fucking crazy. There's no possible way that anybody else is going through what I'm going through. Nobody's going to know what I'm talking about. I'm going to look like I'm completely batshit insane and nobody's going to understand when that is so far from the truth that the minute that you just let your walls down and your barriers down and say, hey, you know what? I need help. I need somebody to talk to. Can you help me? Is the moment that you're going to realize that there's so many people, if not every single person that you meet or walk down the street or see at the grocery store, at the mall, is all going through something in their life that they are still holding on to, and they're allowing it to drag them down or not become the person that they were always meant to be.
I can agree to that so much. I think for me, when I finally told someone what was going on in that abusive relationship, when I finally spoke up and took my power back by using my voice, that was the first step of the change to happen, right? But I had all those feelings of shame, of, oh my God, no one's going to understand me. No one that I knew in my circle growing up or in my life at all ever dealt with domestic violence. So I'm going to be so embarrassed. But it took for me, like I said, to almost lose my life to finally realize, like, it's okay to ask for help and you're not alone. And then when I started sharing my story publicly, especially online, the feedback was so overwhelming of how many people have gone through the same thing that I gone through. And that feeling that, like, I'm not alone, that was so healing in and of itself.
Absolutely. I don't know if you know what started my podcasting journey to share, but at 6 months, I was like, you know what? Somebody in rehab, I told them my story. And they were like, you need to share it. I'm like, nah, man, I'm not comfortable doing all that. I'm not doing it. Every day he told me for like 2 weeks, You need to share your story. You need to share your story. You're going to help somebody. And I was like, no, 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 no. 6 months, I'm home, 6 months. I changed who I started following on Instagram and Facebook. I started following recovery people and listening to podcasts and sober apps and just people like-minded people that I'm doing. And I said, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to reach out to a podcast. Maybe I'll share my story once, and who knows? Maybe I'll help somebody. I don't know. If not, I think it's going to help me because I'm telling my story and it's going to help me mentally. I get on the podcast and I share. 2 weeks later, it gets aired. I'm in a driveway picking up a table to take it to my friend Brandon Novak's recovery house. As I'm sitting there in the driveway waiting for the guy to open the garage door so I can load it in my truck, my phone rings and it says Cleveland, Ohio. And I'm like, first thing I was like, oh man, another scam call. I was like, who the hell's calling me at 8 o'clock in the afternoon?
Right.
But I'm like, oh, you know what? I'll pick it up. So I pick it up and there's a man on the other line. And he said, hey, is this Tim? And I said, yeah, how can I help you? Who's this? And he said, this is Tony. And I'm like, oh man, I'm sorry, dude. I don't know any Tonys, man. I really don't. I'm sorry. He says, no, man, Prophet. He said, I served with you in the Marine Corps in 1995. I'm like, how'd you get my number? What's going on? He goes, I'm sorry, I got it off of Facebook. I hope you don't mind that I called you. I had to call and tell you that I listened to your podcast 4 days ago. He's like, and I've been battling with opioids and alcoholism for 18 years. He said, I had to call and tell you, man. He said, I'm 4 days sober for the first time in 18 years after listening to your podcast. And I wanted to tell you thank you for sharing your story because I felt alone and I didn't know who to turn to. He said, you've given me the strength and courage to change my life. And I hung up the phone and I started crying in the truck. I'm like, again, not a coincidence that not only did I reach one person, but what are the chances is the person that I reached I personally knew and shared my journey with in the Marine Corps, and he was able to call me back and tell me what I did just reached him. I was like, this is what I got to do. So I started my podcast journey, and speaking with you today is my 103rd podcast.
Wow. Oh my God, that is fucking incredible. I aspire to reach that level. And I think that is so beautiful that you were able to turn such a dark moment in your life to now you're healing people. You definitely got God with you. Like, he's your best friend because you have some angels with you.
Before we get off, I'll show you this picture. I'll hold it up to the camera. I went to Kensington, Philadelphia last summer. My friend is a kind of a minister, and he goes there once a month, and he hands out clothes and food to the people at McPherson Park, which they call Needle Park. And I don't know if you've ever been there, but it looks like a third world country down there. And I'm not shitting you. People shoot up in the streets, they smoke crack, and the cops just sit there. And the cops sit there and just make sure nobody overdoses so they can call the ambulances. They don't stop them. It's openly done in the streets. And I went there and spoke and give out food and clothes and just help. And he comes up to me and he's like, hey, man, I know you're not religious that way. I know you're more spiritual, believe in a higher power. He said, but do you mind if I pray with you? I said, absolutely not, man. It's not going to hurt me. Why not? And he puts his hand on my shoulder and he's praying with me. And he's praying and praying. And some random dude takes a picture of us praying. And he comes up to us afterwards and he's like, you guys have got to see this picture. And we're like, what is it? I'm going to see if I can pull it up really quickly. And I was like, there's no way. It's just me and him in this picture. There's people standing around us and there's trees. But as he's got his hand on my shoulder and he's got his head down and I have my head down, there's one beam of light coming from the sky and it's lighting both of us up. And he looks at me and he says, I didn't doctor this picture. He said, I just literally took it on my cell phone. He said, and this is what I captured. I had to come over here and show you this picture. He said, I cannot explain this. And I was like, oh my God, like, is that actually for real? And he said, yes, it is. So it's just, I will pull it up before we hang off here and put it up. Could you have to see? I still can't believe it.
Oh my God. That's God.
Do you see that light?
Yes.
It's just
Wow. That is incredible. Wow. That should be your podcast cover.
right. I have it on my that's my Instagram
Yes.
profile picture.
That is, that's powerful. You're out here living your purpose. I love that so much.
Yeah, I cannot explain that picture, and I don't want to.
No, absolutely. No words needed.
That right when we were done, and my friend looked at me, he says, "See, Tim," he said, "you're right where you need to be."
Mm, amen.
I was like, "Wow."
I love that so much. You see, that's why I always like starting off with the dark and heavy shit, and then I always close it out with like the motivational, inspiring messages because that's the purpose of this podcast. It's called Watch Us Thrive, right?
Yes,
Not watch
yes.
Leanne thrive, not watch Tim thrive. It's us. We all have a purpose. We all have a story to tell. And regardless of the shit that you've gone through, there you can turn your pain into power. And you are the epitome of someone who's been able to do that. And you're living in your truth. So I want to know, since you're on the Watch Us Thrive podcast, tell me your definition of thriving.
Overcoming any and all obstacles in life, not allowing it to hold you down in that stranglehold on your knees, having the strength to stand up, face your fears, and move forward and not look back. That's why the windshield is so big and the rearview mirror is so small. What's in your past is in your past. What's in front of you is big and bright, and go for it. Do you know what the odds are that you were born? It's 1 in 400 trillion.
Trillion?
Trillion. There's only 9 billion people on the planet. The fact that Leanne was born, the fact that Tim was born is 1 in 400 trillion. All of us on this planet have already won the biggest lottery in the world. What are you doing with it?
Amen. And I really love that you said that, Tim, because I say that a lot on my podcast, on my platform. When you're going through those moments of struggle, mental health, and all of these things, and you lose that gratitude, being able to wake up and see another day is such an underrated blessing that a lot of us take for granted. And I think when you start to shift that mindset, like just waking up and saying, "Thank you, God," or whoever your higher power it is that you believe in, for allowing me to see another day, that can completely change your entire mindset for the day. So I really want for the listeners there to like, if you're going through life, because life is ghetto as fuck and it challenges us all the time. But if you just try to be grateful for those little moments, like being able to breathe on your own, or being able to walk out of your home, or coming back home safely after leaving, like those small overlooked blessings, it could completely change your life.
That's why yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery, and today's a gift. That's why they call it the present.
Yes. Amen. I love that so much. All right. I want to ask you just a couple more questions. Whatever age pops up for you, go back to your childhood self. Being the man that you are today, what is one piece of advice you would tell him?
My 6-year-old self. It's not your fault. I think that would have changed my trajectory in life, but I don't want to change my life. I don't want to think that because I would not be this person I am today. But if I knew for a fact, if something came down and said, if you could go back and put that one word in your mind and it would change your life for the rest of your life, I said, yeah, I would say it's not your fault.
Mm, that's powerful. You know, I was a guest on a podcast a couple weeks ago, and he asked me, "Do you regret what you went through when it came to my abusive relationship?" And immediately, without even thinking about it, I said, "No, absolutely not. Like, would you change it?" I said, "No." And it's only been 2 years, right? But just to see the growth that I have within me, to be able to look at that experience that way, that is powerful. Like, I would not take it away. I would not change it. Not saying that I wished for it to happen, not saying that I deserved it or I asked for it. That's not the mentality that I have. But like you said, going through these really dark moments and being able to come out of it on the other side and do something with it, that is powerful.
But just think about it. Last Sunday, I just celebrated my 2 years sober.
Mhm.
You have 2 years. Look at the growth you and I have both had in 2 years. It is
Mm.
more than the past 20.
And this is only the beginning.
That's it. We're babies.
I love that. Oh, such a good conversation. All right. So, last question. In the far future, when you're no longer on this living earth, someone needs to sit down and write about Tim. What do you want them to say about you?
That he overcame his demons, that he showed the world that they're not alone. And no matter what you're going through in life, you can stand up and overcome and become the person that your higher powers always had waiting for you.
Amen. And you are. You absolutely are. And I know that this is, like I said, just the beginning for you and your journey to continue healing and helping other people with your own testimony. And I know my listeners are going to want to know more about you, follow you. So please let them know, how can we follow you? If you have anything that you're working on that you can share with my audience, please let us know.
Well, my main page is on Instagram, and it's at TLODGEN at Lodgen, and that's where I share my fitness journey, my podcasts, my interviews, my magazine interviews. I think I just the other day I just reached 155,000 followers.
Yes, congratulations.
I just got approved for my blue check certification, so it's a legitimate page where you can follow everything. All my links on YouTube for all my videos and podcasts. I also work with two nonprofit organizations. One of them is called Rockstar Testimony, and you can find it on the internet at loveandlighttotheworld.org, where we host men's and women's mental health and addiction and PTSD Zoom meetings Monday through Friday. I host Thursday night on Zoom for free, men's mental health and addiction. Anybody can sign up and come in, and you don't have to talk. You can block your video off. You can just listen or you can participate. But it's every Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern on Zoom. And you can get the link through loveandlighttotheworld.org. You just hit my name and type in your name and that you want to attend, and they send you the link and allow you in. And then I also work with a nonprofit organization called the Overwatch Collective, which is for veterans and first responders who are suffering with PTSD, trauma, addiction, and suicide prevention. And what we do is we raise money for first responders and veterans who may not have the insurance funds to get into facilities or get the medical or psychiatric help that they need. And we also help their spouses, because we put our spouses through hell and back, and they need some therapy too, and they need somebody to talk to as well. 4 months ago, I was in California at a fundraiser, and we raised $65,000 for first responders and veterans, and we were able to get 22 veterans and their spouses into therapy and into treatment.
That is so beautiful. Wow. You are a literal angel on earth, and the work that you're doing is literally changing the world one day at a time. So, Tim, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on here. I know this is just a little bit of your story, and I'm just so honored that we connected. Shout out to the Facebook networking groups for bringing us together. And I just can't not wait to continue watching your journey. So, please don't ever stop because you are incredible.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for having a platform for people like myself to come on and share and have the opportunity to just reach one more person. One more person is one less person that we lose to this disease.
Oh, thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you.